Behold, cat. Right. I meant to make this video like weeks ago, and it was kind of a rough end of 2023 for both me and Diana. I won't get into it right now, but suffice to say, we're both kind of still recovering from getting sick, and we're doing fine now, but still kind of recovering, so I may cough a bit here and there. I apologize, but it is what it is. Now, top 10 video for 2023. As per previous videos, it's a similar format. I was a lot bit more strict this time around with my criteria. Basically, these are my personal, obviously, top 10 choices for the best, or my favorite, I should say, figures that I acquired in 2023. They're not necessarily from 2023. There are a couple here that, of course she's playing around in paper. There are a couple here that did not come out in 2023. They came out prior to that. But it was the first time I got them in 2023, so they were new to me. On that same note, I do not have any cheats this time around. In previous years, I've made exceptions, made little oh, well, this is technically, I already had this before, but whatever, but no. This time, every single thing on this list is a figure that, in any shape or form, I've never owned before. Never owned any version of the mold or any previous iterations that were then remolded. None of that. The only thing that is kind of an exception, but not really, is one of the figures on this list I did get in 2023, but I got it at the very end of 2023, and I had already cut off the 2022 top 10 list by that point, so this now qualifies for 2023. Similarly, there are some figures that I got at the tail end of 2023 that came in after I cut off this list. So those figures are not eligible for this list, but they will be eligible for next year's list. So hopefully that all makes sense. But yes, to reiterate, everything that I have here is a figure or mold that I have never ever encountered before in my life. So no cheating this time. Also, as is usually the case with the top 10 list, this is all how I feel about it. If you feel differently, that's fine, but these are my own personal top 10 plus 5 honorable mentions figures that I got in 2023, which means objectively it is correct. I'm kidding, but gotta make that joke, right? So, well, let's kick things off with number 10, and actually, yeah, I want to mention this up front. I do have videos on every single figure in this list except for one. I really tried hard to make sure I had a video for all of the figures that were going to be in my top 10 list for the year, and with one exception, I managed to pull that off. I will let you know which one does not have a video, but unless I mention it specifically, every single figure that I show in this list, even the honorable mentions, does have an associated video on the channel, and that video will be linked down in the description. Without actual names, it'll just be like rank or whatever, because I don't want to spoil anything until you actually watch the video. So, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started. My number 10 for 2023 is probably not a surprise to a lot of people, because this was a highly sought after figure that is very cool, and I'm glad I got it. But it was kind of annoying to get, and is still kind of annoying to get, but still worth it if you can find the 3-pack. And yeah, that figure is Rise of the Beasts Mainline Air Razor. She's an incredibly cool figure, an incredibly good deluxe, lots of really nice posability, only hampered in a couple of very specific ways that completely make sense given the complexities of the transformation, or the nature of the transformation, I should say. And the transformation is amazing. I love that the legs become the wings and still afford you some actual flapping in bird mode. She looks great. It's a bit of a departure from her, official Beast Wars design, which I really like. But it still looks cool, it's still recognizable, and both modes look great. The transformation is really clever, and this is just a really, really cool figure. I was a little bit worried that my number 9 wouldn't have qualified, because I did actually own a prior version of this mold, but I looked up my records for purchases, and the prior version that I owned, I did still get in 2023, towards the very beginning. So even though I got rid of the original version that I got, and I got this version in 2023, it still counts because this is still the first, 2023 is still the first year I got a hold of that mold. So that is how I'm counting it. So it's Legacy Nemesis Leo Prime. I actually really like the Leo Prime mold, the Legacy Leo Prime mold. It was a really cool figure, and I loved the colors, but then I saw they were doing a Nemesis version, and, I've got that Nemesis collection, so I have to get this. And I was a little bit unsure what to think of the deco because it looked very monochromatic. As I explained in the video for this guy, it's really not as bad in hand, but then they came out with the Repro Labels set, and the Repro Labels, as you can probably see right here, they really kind of set things off. He looks spectacular with the Repro Labels, and as annoying as it was, I did actually paint the Lion Mode eyes red, which I think look so good. Because he did have a bit of a, like, "Aw, what'd I do?" look on his face with the eyes that they gave him, and it's just so weird how counterintuitive it is to give the Nemesis version the innocent little "I'm sorry I tore up the couch" eyes. And yeah, it looks better with the red, but like the Repro Labels really help too. And this is a really cool base figure, and it looks even better with a few enhancements, all of which are relatively simple to do. And yeah, just a great mold all around. Really glad I got this guy. Number 8 is another, not quite Nemesis, but kind of, but not really, but kind of. And this is a figure that for some reason has become really hard to find. I don't know why certain Studio Series leader figures just suddenly are like impossible to get a hold of, but Rise of the Beasts, Studio Series Rise of the Beasts Scourge. I feel like I've been very clear in my video of this guy that I really, really like this figure. Also, I have Freezer there now. This is a fantastic figure. The transformation is really interesting and clever. It's really cool. I want to get the Repro Labels for him, but I also want to get the DNA upgrade kit because I really like the way it kind of bulks out the legs and gives him a bit more of a movie accurate head design. So essentially I'm holding off on doing the Repro Labels until I get the DNA upgrades because I don't know how all that will play together. But just as it is, this is a really cool figure. I'm just also really looking forward to making him even cooler. It looks great. It mostly captures the essence of the character from the movie, though the design is a little bit inaccurate, like primarily the head again, but that's fine. But it's really cool. It is very, very cool. And he is fun to mess with. The transformation is really, really clever, as I said, and definitely worth tracking down, though that might be a little difficult currently. But there are some fourth-party companies that are doing, I think Black Mamba actually has a knockoff of this guy, which is just the same figure, basically, that's either coming out or has come out. I can't remember which, but he's worth getting a hold of in some capacity, is what I'm saying. It would not be a proper top 10 for my channel if I didn't include some Korean transforming robots, right? So of course I had to, and I feel like anyone who's watched the videos of those figures that I've put out over the past year who's probably also not surprised that my number, what are we up to, 7? My number 7 is Metal Cardbot Black Hook. I love this guy's whole thing. It's a pirate ship that turns into a pirate robot, which is great. The articulation is pretty much everything you would want for a modern figure. The only thing he's missing is a waist swivel, which they could have put in there, but it's fine. It's really my only, what I consider legitimate gripes with this figure are the fact that the cannon only clips onto the shoulder, you can't put it in his hand or anything like that, and the fact that the torso section doesn't compress just a little bit for the ship mode, because it just looks a little bit odd. But still a really cool figure. The deco is great, and I love the visual theming that they've got going on here. And like I said, posability is actually really good. So really, really into this guy. Also, I love how his melee weapon is the front of the ship that turns into just an anchor. That's cool. We're just gonna keep going with the Korean robot thing, because number 6 is Mechard Ball Pettenkrantz. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is kind of up there with like turning mech card Griffinx in the sense that this was a figure I wasn't sure I was going to get a hold of because it seemed weirdly hard to find anywhere. But I was able to find someone selling it actually out of the US on eBay, and I'm still not entirely sure if I bought it from Soltron or if I just think I may have because the photos had like a similar background to his video setup. I don't know. Point is, I'm just glad I got this. I also managed to track down the little car guy, the actual car that goes with him, so I'm not using the cardboard one that it came with. And it's a really cool figure. The articulation's pretty good. You know, it doesn't have a waist swivel, and he's got bicep curler arms, which I don't like bicep curler arms, but it is what it is. You know, Griffinx is still one of my favorites, and he's got bicep curler arms. I can live with it. And he's just really cool. You know, he looks really neat. I actually like the gimmick of the little extra car that goes in the chest and can kind of automatically transform, even though the actual transformation, like what it turns into, is a little bit eh. But it's a fun process. He's got, you know, a weird but neat vehicle mode, and also the 2 different animal modes, the scorpion and 2-headed dragon, because he like splits in half and does that. So there's just a lot that this guy has to offer, in addition to multiple weapons, because the wings on his back can pull off and become a big sword. So I love that this guy has so many play options. And he just looks neat, and he's fun to mess with. Now we come to the honorable mentions, and this figure that I'm about to show, just this one, is the one figure I do not have a video on the channel for. So I'm sorry about that. It was just it was going to be a lot, and I just never got around to it because it's like a combiner and it's got all these other things to talk about, and I just never had the energy to spend the time to put a video together in the amount of time I had. But as we come to the runner-ups, these are actually in a kind of order. So first runner-up, so I guess this would technically be number 15 if this was a top 15 list, is Mini-Force V-Rangers King V. Is this even on screen? It looks like it's on screen. This enormous thing is just enormous and weird and silly, and I actually like it a lot. All of the individual robots, it's 3 different robots. They are somewhat limited in terms of their articulation. The combined mode is even more limited. But they all look cool individually. They have some interesting stuff that they do in that, like, the primary core guy is 2 vehicles that combine to make 1 robot. Then there's the next up that's like 3 vehicles that combine to make 1. And then the third one is a single vehicle that turns into a robot. And then you can combine them all in various ways, very Sentai-like, in that you could do like robots 1 and 2 to make a big robot, and then you can add number 3 to make the biggest robot. And this is a big and heavy combiner that looks utterly ridiculous, but in a way that I really, really love. It's not necessarily cool, but it kind of is at the same time. And I love the colors, I love the just madcap weirdness of this whole thing, I love the gigantic hat that's so ridiculous. It's a cool set, and it's fun to mess with. It's just not, you know, as amazing as the other stuff on this list. Honorable mention number 4, or 2, depending on how you want to look at it, is another figure that's really good, and I really, really like this guy. He does some really neat and interesting things with a previously established character. And it's a great design, even though I wasn't necessarily into the aesthetic for the rest of the line. I really like how it works with this specific figure. And it's fun to mess with. The transformation is really interesting. There's a lot of posability, a lot of options with how you deal with the accessories, and it just looks cool. And I'm just going to say the name now because I feel like I'm rambling, but yeah. Next runner-up, or honorable mention, is Iron Factory's Daishogun Bumaru. And this little fella is just a samurai Grimlock, and he looks so good. The paint detailing is nice and crisp. There are a lot of different sections that are called out, a lot of really nice color separation and colors that work really well together. The deco is appropriately spiky and sort of plated looking. That really gets across that samurai motif, and it fits Grimlock extremely well. I also like how it sort of hybridizes the classic Grimlock look with a little bit of the live-action Bayverse aesthetic. Like how the Dino Mode head has the little horns on the back, stuff like that. It's really cool. He looks cool. He poses really well, and it's a really, really nice Grimlock. that I am very happy to have. Okay, this honorable mention is it was kind of a tough call because I do really like a very specific aspect of this and specific mode, let's say. But the primary mode I actually don't think is all that interesting, but I like the other stuff so much that I'm able to kind of look past that, but that's also kind of why it ended up being an honorable mention. Also, I got the DNA upgrade kits, and I'm kind of disappointed in them in a few aspects anyway. But anyway, yeah, it's the Legacy Stunticons, and I say Stunticons specifically because I'm just not all that into Menasor, like the Legacy Menasor, I should say. I mean, he looks okay. He looks good. I got the repro labels, I got the DNA upgrades, though it didn't put the chest on because that's a whole other thing I go over in the video for this guy, and I don't want to get into that right now. But it's a cool combiner. I feel like definitely better than Combiner Wars Menasor. I don't mind the combiner skeleton thing that it does, it's fine. The thing that disappoints me about it is it's just kind of like, it's fine, it's okay, but the individual Stunticons are so much more appealing to me and so much more fun to mess with than Menasor proper. So yeah, it's the Legacy Stunticons, the whole 5-bot team, that is what I consider my honorable mention number 3. I just have them in Menasor mode because this takes up the least amount of shelf space. So yeah, that's how that works out. But like, I do really like each individual figure, even Breakdown and Wild Rider. They are simple, and their backpack is weird, but I really think they're fun, and I like them, even with the weird hip detent thing. Drag Strip is great. Dead End is actually my favorite of the Limbots, even though a lot of people hate him. Like, with the repro labels especially, when you can actually, like, separate out the feet a little bit color-wise, it makes such a huge difference. So, like, Dead End is a lot of fun. And then Motormaster he's a great Motormaster. Yeah, the trailer becomes the combiner body, but that's fine. And Motormaster also looks great with repro labels. It's just a fun set all around. I just wish I was more into Menasor himself, but it's fine, because the individual figures are still great. Now I just need enough space to display them as their individual figures more often. Okay, almost done with the honorable mentions. Honorable mention number 2 is another figure that was great. I always wanted a version of, specifically the Masterpiece version, of this character. Never got around to getting it for various reasons. At this point, I probably wouldn't because it's so big. I don't think I have space for it in my current shelf layout. I'd have to move a lot of things around. But I'm extremely happy to have the kind of mainline version of that. And that is Studio Series 86 Ultra Magnus. I will admit, when I first got this guy, I was having trouble deciding how I felt about him. The transformation is really clever. The posability is there. There's a lot of little nuance to it, but then there are certain things that I really wish they had done differently, like the wheels on the feet. I wish that those were transformable a little bit differently because it just is so unsatisfying to shift them up or down, and they like barely move. I also really don't like the forward rotation on these shoulders because the outward is just like this tiny little pin hinge. It's like right up there. So it doesn't look great when you bring his arms out, and also that is just the only connection point when you rotate the arms forward and back, and they're on ratchets. Pretty strong ratchets, so it's like, eh. But he does look great. The transformation is fun. As much as I'm like, on the limb separation gimmick, I do think it's cute that they added that. And I am still utterly enamored with this silly gimmick. I love that the spring-loaded doors pop open when you lift up the little plate there for the matrix chamber. It's weird and silly and just very toy-like, and I love it for that. But yeah, Ultra Magnus, Studio Series 86 Ultra Magnus is actually really good. He's basically like a cheaper version of the Masterpiece that actually fits on my shelf. I know he's not exactly the same, and from what I've seen, there are some things he actually does better than the Masterpiece, but he is a cool figure. I am glad I got him. I just wasn't as thrilled to get him as some of the other figures on this list, which is why he is an honorable mention. And yes, I do hope to get the repro label set for Studio Series 86 Ultra Magnus eventually. But final honorable mention for the video, This is a figure that I wanted to get for a very long time and never had the opportunity to. Then when it finally got reissued, the reissue actually sucked, and they made a lot of questionable decisions about the way they handled the reissue. But 2023, I was finally able to get a hold of a version of the original version that was not the reissue that did all the questionable stuff, and it's great. And yeah, it's Generation Toys Tyrant, their version of an IDW Stealth Bomber Megatron. As I said, I've been eyeballing this thing for a while, wanted to get it when it came out, but when it first came out, I was still hesitant to spend the kind of money that a lot of these third-party figures ask for their for them, so never ended up getting it. And then it was just sold out everywhere, couldn't find it, or if it was available, it was for like double or even triple the original price, and I was definitely not willing to pay that. Then Generation Toy did the reissue where they replaced all the black plastic with translucent plastic, which is not a silly choice at all. But this is the original release. You can tell because the fusion cannon is a little bit more blunted. It doesn't come to like an extremely sharp point. And also you can tell because his ankles aren't cracked. But this is an incredibly cool figure. The transformation is a little bit finicky around the chest, but doable. And he looks fantastic. Posability is great. Transformation is actually satisfying to pull off. It reminds me a lot of Generation Toys OpX, which I have the Nemesis version of, in that the transformation is involved but not too complex, and it accomplishes a lot, and it looks great in both modes, and it's just fun to mess with. It's big and sturdy and poses well. And this is basically just the Stealth Bomber Megatron version of that figure, which I am totally into. Yeah, great figure, just didn't hit me hard enough to be on the list, in like the top 10 list proper, but very, very close. And now we return to the top 10 list proper. We are down to the top 5, and it was really hard narrowing down this list. Like, I actually did a live stream on the Discord where I had a desk full of around 30-something figures, and I just spent the entire stream just chatting with folks and trying to slowly pare things down. So it was like taking some figures off the desk, then deciding to put some back on, and switching things around and stuff. And it was a tough call, but the top 5 are all figures that I was confident were going to stay on the top 10. I mean, a couple of the other ones too, but yeah, these are ones where, like, as soon as I got them, I was like, this is definitely top 10 material. So, yeah, number 5 is Fans Hobbies Huntsman / Double Agent, which is their version of Double Dealer. I am using Huntsman. I guess maybe it's a little bit of a flex, because this was the convention exclusive that they did with the Chosen Prime, and it's Fans Hobbies Double Dealer or Double Agent redone as Euro G1 Stalker. And I remember when Double Agent came out, I was really kind of hoping they would do something like this with the mold, and then they did, and it just made me so happy. And then I found out that it's going to be an extremely limited release, and the whole getting it was a huge debacle, and that was just awful. The site had serious problems with handling the load of people checking it out to do the orders. A lot of people got screwed over, and I fortunately was not one of them. But it was a mess. It's regrettable how that turned out, but I am glad that I managed to get a hold of one. I even got one of the 2 most coveted numbers, because they do have edition numbers. It's whatever out of 600. And yeah, I got one of the 2 most coveted numbers out of 600. And if you want to know what number that is, you can check out the video I made for this guy, or it's technically the video for Double Agent, but he's in it. It's a great mold. I really like the Double Agent mold for its triple changing. It's actually quadruple changing because it's got a secondary robot mode. But I kind of like this version. I also like this version in how it's only the 2 modes. It's the missile truck and the robot. And they both look really good, and the colors are just fantastic. The newly sculpted head is great. and I love the translucent lime green missile tip. It's so ridiculous. It's a great figure in any capacity, any way you can get it. They also, as of this recording, the Chosen Prime and Vans Hobby just announced and put up the Machine Wars Soundwave recolor version of this figure for sale. I have no idea if that thing's sold out already or if it'll be sold out by the time this video goes live, but if it's not sold out and you want to get a version of this mold, it's a good mold. So that's definitely an option. For me though, Euro G1 Stalker is definitely the way to go. I love the absurd pinks and blues and greens on this thing, and it's regrettable that it was such a faff trying to get a hold of one in the first place. It also kind of sucks that my Power Master was actually a QC problem when I first got mine, but fortunately the Chosen Prime was able to get a replacement from Vans Hobby, so I have a knackered, why am I using so many British terms? I have a messed up Power Master sitting in my parts box in my closet, and then this is the one that's actually like correct. So I'm glad I got that sorted out, because I did not want to return this thing, both because of the rarity and because when am I ever going to get that edition number again, you know? Yes, great figure. Definitely worth getting, or the Double Deal. The Double Deal is also great and has the additional robot and bird modes. So, just if you want one, get one, definitely. Number 4 keeps the Vans Hobby thing going, because of course it does, and that is Vans Hobby's Fright Storm, their version of Dreadwind. And this was a figure that I was incredibly excited when I saw the announcement and they showed off the gray prototypes, then got bummed out when I saw it was going to be the Japanese colors. Which, you know, it's fine, especially for the people who want that, that's great. But like for me, what really draws me to Dreadwind is this color scheme. The white, the purple, and the turquoise, or in this case, light blue. That's what really sells me on this design. I just wasn't feeling it the same with the Japanese toy colors. And so when they were like, hey, we're doing this version too, I had to get it. And then I got it, and the figure is great. It's a lot bigger than I expected. There's a lot of decent articulation on this guy. I'm really impressed by the fact that they gave him a waist swivel despite how this thing transforms. The only things that really bum me out about him are the proportions of the arms are really weird. Like the forearms are gigantic, and the sliders that you use to transform him don't actually lock in, or at least I haven't been able to get them to lock in, and that seems like a weird little oversight. But he is really cool. He's fun to transform, does some really interesting things, and I also absolutely adore the way the cockpit section of the jet expands and reshapes to become the robot chest. That is very cool. So yeah, very cool figure. I still, at this point, don't really have plans to get their version of Darkwing because I don't really care to do the combined jet mode, and Darkwing was never like... I was never as drawn to Darkwing as I am to Dreadwind, but I don't know, that may change in the future, we'll see. But for now, I'm just happy to have this, because this is an extremely cool figure. Number 3 is the one holdover from the end of 2023 that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, where this was a figure that I got in 2023, but it came in after I cut off the list for that, came in at the end of 2022, sorry. But it was after I cut off the list for 2023, so not eligible for the 2022 list, but eligible for the 2023 list, and stayed on that list for the entire year. Number 3 is Holiday Optimus Prime. This version specifically has the repro labels. Also, mine did have the QC issue of the one of the arm panels on the back being incorrect, but fortunately I was able to remedy that by buying a second one off of eBay and just swapping the arms and then selling off the one that that I just bought with the arm that was messed up, making sure to, making it clear in the listing that the arm was messed up. I was upfront about that. It's not like I tried to, pass it off as, oh, it's brand new and everything's perfect. But point is, paid a little extra, but I really didn't want to deal with like customer service stuff and getting another one in a box that could have the same problem. So waited to get one that definitely had the right arms, swapped the thing out, did the repro labels, and this, I said as much in the video for this guy. The figure on its own is fantastic. It does some really clever stuff with the transformation. It's got a lot of really neat tricks. The deco is like interesting. I mean, the Volvo one does look extremely pretty. I will give it that. But for me, this is the one because the Santa Claus deco is so weird and interesting and silly. It's not necessarily a year-round kind of thing in terms of like, hey, this is relevant, but it's still really silly and interesting and fun, and the repro labels add even more to it. I love the reflective gold buckles you get on like the boots and stuff like that, and the kind of snow-covered windows that you get with the stickers. It's a great set. It looks great on a great figure, and as I said, the figure on its own is extremely good. So, I mean, any version of this mold is, you can't go wrong, but this, the holiday version, is the one for me because of just how different it is. And it survived an entire year to make it to the number 3 spot. Number 2 is Astrid. Yeah, sorry honey, you're only number 2. Also, I'm cheating because I've experienced this mold for the past 6 years, is it? No, 7. Going on 8, wow. Yeah, obviously Astrid is not actually my number 2. She's just very, very attention hungry right now. But no, my number 2, probably not going to be a surprise to anyone because this figure was number 1 on a lot of people's lists. And when we get to number 1, you'll understand why this is not number 1 on my list. But it is a very close second. That is Legacy Armada Optimus Prime. All I can really do here is echo what so many other people have said. This figure is fantastic, all around. All the different modes are cool. The base mode is kind of whatever, but like the core robot is fantastic. I think I actually like that even more than the combine mode, but the combine mode's also still really cool, and also I don't know what I would do with the trailer if I were to just do the core robot. Fingers crossed they do that core robot as a nemesis, because I will totally buy that and just have 2 versions of the mold, I don't care. But it's a fantastic figure. It is so much fun to transform. And it's weird because I'm not used to the actual transformation being the big draw for me. I mean, it's a draw, absolutely. Transformation is important. I'm really into the transformations. My figures have to transform. That's one of the prerequisites I set for myself. I love that aspect of it, but like, usually the thing that trumps everything else with a figure is like the style or the design or the colors or something like that. And then the transformation is also its own thing that I enjoy separately. But like Armada Prime, it's just so rare that like for me, the transformation itself becomes the highlights. And it's not to say that any of the other modes are bad. As I said, I actually think all the other modes, aside from maybe the base, are fantastic in their own right. It's just that the transformation itself between all of those modes kind of eclipses all of them. It's just a really fun figure to mess with, and because he looks great in all those modes, it makes messing with him in the first place even more rewarding because it's fun, and then the results you get when you do it are aesthetically pleasing. It's just kind of a great all-around figure, and I'm really, really happy with this. But I do hope they do a Nemesis version of the core robot because Nemesis. But yeah, this is great. I want to do the repro labels, and I'm considering the DNA upgrades for a few reasons. But yeah, this is just a very worthwhile figure and highly recommended. I feel like he's still semi-reasonable in terms of price, but definitely a worthwhile Commander class figure. I mean, as you could tell, because of the numbering on this list, I put him above Ultra Magnus, Studio Series 86 Ultra Magnus, because he's just a more fun all-around package. Ultra Magnus is great, but he does not have the same fun factor and all-encompassing playability as Legacy Armada Prime. Oh, this is awkward. So, now we come to the number 1 figure for 2023, and as I said, Armada Prime being number 2 will make sense when we get to this one, and I feel like as soon as you see it, you're going to know. This is a figure that is not going to be readily available for everybody, which is unfortunate, but I do highly recommend it if you can find it for a reasonable price. It is absolutely worth it for a reasonable price. And that is nothing else to it. That is HasLab Deathsaurus. This was initially a tough call because I was worried that it was going to be recency bias that made me pick HasLab Deathsaurus over everything else. And so I really wanted to take some time to think about it before putting him, at the top of the list. I knew he was going to be in the top 10. I didn't know he was going to be number 1 for a bit. But after mulling it over for a while, I came to realize that this is the most full package out of any of the other figures I got this year. I mean, Armada Prime, very close to a full package in terms of almost being perfect all around. But Deathsaurus, you've got pristine paint decos, no stickers or anything like that. The coloring is fantastic. The color separation is great. The paint is nice and crisp. I didn't have any bad QC stuff on this guy. Not that that really counts, but the overall look is great. Posability is great. The transformation is clever and interesting. You've got joints in here that you wouldn't necessarily expect, like the forward butterfly motion that's locked in there that you can unlock. And there's so much playability to this set. Maybe not the same kind of playability as Armada Prime, but lots of playability. You've got so many display options between the throne that he's currently sitting in and the stand that you can do, in-air poses in robot mode or in kaiju mode or anything like that. But then you've got the absolute ton of accessories that all store, with the exception of the flight stand and blast effects, that all store on the back of the throne. And so you can play around with all those accessories, and a lot of those accessories, well, maybe not a lot, the cannon, at least, the big cannon can be used in the kaiju mode. You've got the use of the chest masters for Eagle Chest and Tiger Chest that are just fun to mess with on their own. I really like the chest compartmentalizing thing, how you can put them both in there or one or the other, and the fact that they can become animals and they can become weapons that Deathsaurus can hold. Eagle Chest can become this silly little two-barrel blaster thing, which is silly, but I love it. And Tiger Chest becomes this really cool bow and arrow, and you even have an arrow that you can pose him with it, and that's extremely cool. You've got the tail shield that can go on the shoulder or go in the hand. You've got the sword, which looks incredibly cool. The giant cannon, the ball and chain. He's got these enormous, just lovely looking wings, these really cool kind of crescent shapes with the wonderful deco. The transformation, as I said, is really clever and fun. The kaiju mode looks great and is a little bit weird, but that's kind of part of his design. And it's just such a great all-around package. That is why this is my number 1 for the year. As I said, I did deliberate on it. I didn't want this to be a knee-jerk reaction thing. It took some time to really think on it. But unquestionably, after thinking about it, Deathsaurus is my number 1 for the year. And this is not counting the Micromasters that it came with. I mean, the Micromasters, Peepo and Boater are cool in their own right, and way better than Fire and Holly, because, I actually managed to get a hold of Victory Saber, woo! When they did the Vault sale towards the end of 2023. So, yay for that, but didn't get him before this list, so Victory Saber didn't qualify. But yeah, I've experienced Fire and Holly, and they are not great. So it makes me appreciate Peepo and Boater a lot more. But even not counting the Micromasters, because I feel like the Micromasters are not going to be what make or break this set, this is just such an incredible set. It's a display piece in its own right. I mean, look at this. But it's also incredibly fun to just take off the shelf and mess with, and just try different poses, different accessory layouts, transform it back and forth. And it's just, I don't know, I really appreciate the fact how it's this big, fun, kind of rare, I guess, just due to the, the nature of HasLab, centerpiece, or at least major part of a collection that is also just fun to play with. It's a great combination. It's almost very Fans Hobby in that regard, because Fans Hobby is really good at doing like high-end collector pieces that are also just straight up toys that are fun to play with. I feel like that's kind of what this captures. And it is just a lot of fun to mess with, and it looks fantastic in just about any way you can display it. So yeah, HasLab Deathsaurus, absolutely #1, no question. I'm just sorry that it's going to be difficult to track down for anyone who wants to get one who hasn't yet. And that does it for 2023's top 10. There are some other figures I kind of wanted to add to the list, but I just couldn't because they came in after the cutoff date. Like all 4 of the Reactivate figures that I have now, Starscream, Bumblebee, Optimus Prime, and Soundwave, they're all fantastic, but they came in after the cutoff date, so they cannot be part of this specific list. But they might be in the 2024 list. Who knows? We'll see in roughly a year. But yeah, there's those. There's a couple of legacy figures that came in. The animated Bumblebee and Optimus Prime came in after the cutoff. Those are also really fun. Victory Saber, as I said. So it'll be interesting to see what the list is like next year. But this is what the list is like this year, and that is my own list. So what are your top 10 figures for 2023? You don't have to keep to the same rules that I did. They don't even have to be Transformers. They could be stuff that you've owned previously. It's whatever. Whatever your favorite acquisitions are for the year, feel free to let me know. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And that wraps this up. I have not been on camera for a while. I'm just realizing this now. I feel like it hasn't been for almost a year. Yeah, that's my list. Thank you all for watching, and we're gonna go back to the regular video review stuff. Not reviews, but the regular video stuff we're going back to shortly after this. I don't remember the order that everything's going up in, so there might be a couple of things that are... well, no, nothing that's going up was in this list, so we don't have to worry about that. But point is, because of my filming schedule, things are going to be a little weird. So it'll be like, oh, he was talking about this figure, but he didn't make a video for it. But he did make a video for it, but it's not out yet. And it's, yeah, it's because I set things ahead of time and like film in batches. I don't like film then record, like film and then edit and then upload immediately. So sometimes there can be several days to several weeks between when I record a video and it actually goes up. This though, this is only going to be a few days because I need to get this thing up because it's already like partway through January. So again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in whatever the next video you watch is.